Hi, welcome to our next complex numbers video. We finally get to show you how to do complex numbers on your graphics calculator. Hooray! We know complex numbers in rectangular form are written in the form of a plus or minus bi. So let's show you how we use our calculator to do a lot of the basic calculations we've shown you. What about if we want to add two complex numbers? Well, we go into our calculator inside the run mode, and inside that we push the option, which brings up a complex menu, which is F3, and inside that menu we have the complex functions. And let's show you how we use these to solve some problems. So we want to add w plus z, so we can just type in w, which is negative 2 plus 6i. I like to put them in brackets. And to bring up I, you just push F1, which is the function key for bringing up the I function. And so I type in W plus Z, and then I push execute or enter, and I get 3 plus 3i. What if I want to do something a bit more complicated, like 2W minus Z? Well, I'm just going to go to bracket and then type in my W. Remember, when I type in I push F1 to bring up I, and then I subtract Z, and you will see that I get negative 9 plus 15i. Well, we can do more complicated calculations like W times Z. In this situation, I like to put brackets around W, and I don't need to put the times in the middle, and then brackets around the Z, and I get 8 plus 36i. Do you remember the old way of having to multiply out the brackets? Yeah, it speeds things up quite nicely. All right, what about W divided by Z? So again, I like to put everything in brackets. I go bracket minus 2 plus 6i. I push F1 to bring up the I button. And then I close my brackets and go divide, new brackets, 5 minus 3i for Z. And I get my solution. Do you remember the old way of having to multiply by the conjugate complex number and expand all the brackets out and then simplify down to your real and imaginary bit? Well, this is obviously a lot quicker, but be careful for complicated problems like merit and excellence. They're not going to let you get away with this kind of stuff. You do have to know those basic ideas. All right, what about W squared? Well, that's just W times W. So you can either go W and then W again, or you can go bracket negative 2 plus 6i for W to the power of 2. So that's pretty easy. And what about W with a Z with a line above it? Do you remember that line basically means the conjugate complex number? So we're taking W and timesing by the conjugate of Z. You've got two ways of doing it. One way is you type in W minus 2 plus 6i, and then you either just remember that the conjugate is 5 plus 3i, or the other way is to type in W minus 2 plus 6i, and then times by, and if you push F4, it brings up the conjugate, and when you type in Z, you type in 5 minus 3i, the original Z, because the calculator works out the conjugate for you. I'm not quite sure why you can't remember that the minus turns into a plus, but that's okay. Now, remember, complex numbers also get put on an argand diagram in both rectangular form, but also polar form. And polar form has an R for a modulus and an theta for an argument. So we can also do polar form on the calculator. So how do we change Z equal to 4 plus 2i into polar form? Well, that's nice and easy. We use the ABS to bring up the modulus. So just remember, ABS is my modulus, so push F2 to bring up ABS and go bracket 4 plus 2i, and it works out the modulus, which is the distance away from the origin. And we use the ARG button for the argument, the angle, so we just push F3 and then open brackets 4 plus 2i. If my calculator is set up in degrees, it'll give me 26.56 or 26.6 degrees, but if my calculator is set up in radians, I'll get 0.4636 radians. So then I can write it down into polar form in either degrees or radians. Right. I think that's us, so thanks so much.